and welcome to Crafts and Crime. I'm Amy.
I'm Elaine.
So, today we are currently bribing two of our children to clean two of my other children's room.
Yep.
So, it's the little one's room. It's always a mess, but I'm getting a new bunk bed tomorrow. I'll put it together. Fun birthday stuff.
Oh, I know, right? So exciting. Happy birthday. Here's your kid's bed.
Yeah, exactly. They broke their bunk bed jumping. It's like the foot part, like right where you climb up, and it's like right where his feet would go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. He kicked out one of them, and there's only like 2 bars there.
Yeah.
And then he kicked out the other one. So Jack was like, that's not safe.
Yeah, that's like a fall off the total end of the bed.
Yeah, exactly. So
I did that once as a little kid, but we don't know how it happened because I was not a sleepwalker, and I think I just slid down the ladder.
oh,
But I don't even remember waking up or anything.
That's happened to Lincoln.
I always
So
wonder.
yeah, all of a sudden
I was a
he's
very
like-
fidgety sleeper.
Yeah, I know. So we have to get him a new bunk bed. And we need a bunk bed because there's 2 of them in a small room.
Yeah.
So
Oh gosh, the houses we live in were built in the 50s, and the rooms were tiny because they were literally meant for sleeping and getting dressed, and
exactly, not
So they
2
were
kids
really-
and all their toys.
Mhm, and a TV and lamps
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff like that.
A lot of toy storage and stuff.
Yes.
And then my other 2 share the other room, but that's like that used to be the master. It's
They have the
so
big one,
big.
the add-on.
Yeah, the add-on that has like 2 closets and everything.
And then I'm
so-
over here like, my craft room's the biggest room in my house
yeah.
because my daughter got the backyard and my husband has a garage.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
So-
hey, my craft room has the cat box. That is the sacrifice I made for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
true.
gross.
I know. My cat box is my laundry room. So
Lucky.
anytime I do laundry, I have to smell it. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a battle.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
definitely doing crafts more than I would be doing laundry.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to get that kitty robot thing that you have.
Yeah. Oh, the litter robot. It's
Come
so
on,
worth
litter
it.
robot, sponsor us.
I know. Seriously. Yeah. It's a game changer because we went from 2 cats to 4 cats real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Because my aunt passed away and she had 2 cats, and so she wanted them to go to family, and my brothers couldn't take them, and so we took them. So we went from 2 to 4, and thankfully we had that litter robot because I can't imagine. But then you went from 2 to 3 real quick.
Yes, we went
Yeah.
from no, we're never gonna get any animals to 3 cats in barely over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Our shared house cat.
Yeah, I was like, he's over here too, so it's kind of like I have 5 cats sometimes.
Yeah, and
But-
then now with like the chickens and stuff. And
I know. We have a whole
It was
menagerie over
fast.
here.
It
It's
was
a lot.
fast.
It's a lot. Yeah, you went from 2 cats to a lot real fast. but we love it. So, did you have a craft?
Yeah, I
Okay.
have a craft today. So this one, as I mentioned in our first episode, I'm going to be doing crafts. I'm going to talk about topics specifically from endangered craft lists. And there are some that are extinct. That's what I had mentioned first, but that list is so small.
Mm-hmm.
It literally is 4.
Oh,
So
okay.
the endangered list is quite long. And so one of them I'm going to be talking about today is the art of gold beading. Beading, I will spell it out. Beating, not
Oh,
beads.
I'm thinking beads.
Beating.
Oh, beating. So
Yes.
beating gold.
Yes, you beat it.
Beat
So
it.
exactly. And this is to make gold foil, gold leaf.
Okay.
And so, as always, just like with bread, the Egyptians did gold beating first.
Mhm.
They, took the gold out. Gold comes out of the ground pure, which is quite interesting. It's one of the very few metals that does come out pure. And so in 2000 BC, they started using this gold leafing for statues and the burial masks, everything.
Mhm.
Like gold was popping. It was they said it was so common that gold leafing was as common as their grains of sand.
Mm.
So it was something people saw all the time. And the way it's done now is exactly the way it's done then, to the best of their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So gold is taken and it's melted in what's called a crucible, which is now made out of graphite, like pencil lead.
Mhm.
And they form them into these little cups. They put all the nuggets in and they warm it up at 2,000 degrees.
Oh, okay.
And that is 1093 Celsius, so 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. And they melt it. And some of the goldsmiths that are smelting, that's what this is called, believe that the best gold leaf is made at 2500 degrees Fahrenheit or 1371 degrees Celsius. So the gold comes out, and typically now the gold comes out as a bar that is roughly, it's small. It's super small. In one of the examples I was talking about, or learning about, I'm sorry, this brick is just about the size of a standard household brick, your backyard red brick. Just
There's a lot of gold.
So just at about 7 inches long and about 2 inches tall and 3 inches wide. Try to imagine this in your two hands in front of you. That small brick will weigh 27 pounds.
What?
Yes, 27 pounds. And because gold is 70% heavier than lead. If you've ever held a lead fishing weight, that is so much weight in that tiny little bearing. So it's extremely heavy. And that bar would actually be worth about $500,000 in today's.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So this gold is now taken and it is cut up into chunks that are about an inch wide, and it's put through a machine now. They don't know how they did it then, but they just pretty much did the same thing, the method I will be explaining soon, but just without technology. So now it's put through big rollers, like pasta rollers. Imagine that on this massive industrial scale. And they pull this chunk of gold, and it keeps getting pulled and pulled and pulled, but it's still only about 2 inches wide. And at 20 yards, it's cut. And at this point, this gold is the same thickness as your normal household, like kitchen aluminum foil.
Oh, okay.
They take it and it's cut into tiny little squares. And this is done the same way, where it's really popular still in Italy and also in Myanmar and Burma in Southeast Asia. They take these strips. They have the same kind of rolling machines, just on smaller scales. They take these strips and it's cut into small 2x2 inch squares, and they put it in between sheets of vellum. This vellum, up until the late 60s, before plasticized vellum came out, if you're a scrapbooker, you'll know the texture. It's very strange. Was made from the lining intestines of cows and calves and sheep. And because gold is so thin by the end, they have to use the vellum. So they put these tiny little squares of the thickness of kitchen aluminum foil, in your mind, in between sheets of vellum, and they make a stack, and the stack is called a cutch.
Okay.
And in between each layer, they used to take a hare's foot covered in kaolin clay, and they would have to dust it because the gold becomes so thin it would stick. So we have this cutch. They wrap it in parchment paper.
Okay.
And then they start beating it with a hammer.
Okay. I thought you were going to say the rabbit's foot.
No.
Well,
now,
that'll take a while.
The process starts with a hammer that weighs 17 pounds.
Okay. So kind of like what Jack was using, that giant axe to cut all the wood.
Yes.
And it's heavy, and he was like, my back hurts, because
so
it's like...
it's 17 pounds. They start off at 17 pounds, and they hand hammer this cutch, which is a little packet of this little booklet, and they hand hammer it, and they start at 17 pounds. Then the next hammer starts at 6 pounds. So it goes way down. And this is just continuing the process of flattening and smushing the gold. That's it. It's a crazy, simple, but extremely labor-intensive process. After the 6-pound hammer will come an 8-pound hammer, so just a little bit heavier. This heaviness continues to spread the gold leafing. And then following a 13-pound hammer.
Okay.
At the end of this process, by hand, it's 20,000 hand hammers.
Oh,
over and over and over. And this is typically done in a sitting. It's the
That's
same
crazy.
way it's still done to this day, by hand, because the process that has become mechanized they have hand hammer like machines with the same size mallets that go through the same exact process, is not any faster.
Oh, really?
It's not faster in any way. Nope. It has to be done in such a precise way because everything matters. The humidity in the room matters because being that thin, it becomes conducive to metal. If there's static in the air, it will stick and it'll fly. It won't be able to separate from the sheets. It's all so precise still that even when machines do it, it has to be checked so consistently. So by hand, it's still the best done by hand. One of the main things that gold leaf has been used throughout history, especially in Southeast Asia, is the offerings they give to Buddha were offerings of gold. Well, for people that were underprivileged and couldn't afford that, they could buy gold leaf.
Yeah, because it's like...
And yes, exactly. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's an affordable offering that anybody can do, and they would take this leafing and they would go and they would be able to leaf the statues as an offering just like anybody else could. And the process has never changed, and gold is so strong that the thinness it can be pounded out to is measured by something called an angstrom, because it can be less than a wavelength of light in thickness.
That's crazy.
Before breaking. A stack of 30,000 gold leaves is only 1 inch tall. And the way that the best way to explain it would be that it's 3/millionths of an inch thick. It's if we took a human hair.
I was going to say, how does it compare to human hair? Because that's like...
1/1000th.
Okay, so like...
To the point where cut gold leaf looked under the strongest microscope in the world, looks like it has no edge. It turns into an invisible edge.
What? That's
because
crazy.
It's so thin.
Because it's so thin.
Yes, it's unbelievable, and it's still done the same exact way.
Wow.
So, we'll post pictures. I'm going to have a picture of the hieroglyphics that's showing the process of them hammering gold out, and it's hard to know how they stretched it out personally, but I can't imagine it's much different. They probably just had a larger chunk, and it would be by hand, and they had that strip. Something really interesting is the way that the gold leaf is cut to be trimmed and look pretty. It has to be done with sharpened bamboo skewers.
Oh, really?
Because steel blades, the gold leaf will stick to it immediately.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's been done so well throughout history. Egyptians had perfected it to the point that it's so pure, it remains completely untarnished still to this day in museums. And the British museums do have some that are complete strips that are one solid strip that they have. That's lining cool. Pieces of furniture and things, and it remains still completely unbroken to this day. So it's pretty amazing.
It is.
And it's, in the end, the gold ends up being pretty much pure. Occasionally they do add some other metals, which is silver and copper, and so it turns 24 karat gold leaf down to 23 karat. But in Italy it still is used pure. They use it pure.
That's interesting. That was really
very pretty.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so beautiful, and depending on the metal content also changes the color. Now I have bought leafing for a gilding thing I was going to do, a project. Maybe I'll do it here. And oh my god, it's so hard to work with because it's real. It's real, and it's so fluttery. And
yeah, I can't remember what I used gold leaf for, but I remember it being like so like tissue paper.
And it's like this, there's this, sometimes what you will buy at craft stores is like oxidized, and it is easier to work with. If you buy gold leafing through anywhere, Amazon, and it's pure, what they consider pure, they'll still try to sometimes pass it off as 24 karat gold, but it isn't always. It's the little squares that you'll have are typically going to be less than the size of a postage stamp.
Oh wow.
Because it's expensive.
It's expensive.
It sucks. I think I had gotten a set, I believe it was like 25 tiny little postage stamp sizes of pieces of gold, and I believe it was like $18.
That's crazy.
For just this little teeny tiny
Mhm.
bit that I'm probably going to fudge up because it's so
know.
fussy. And, you know, with humidity and
Mhm.
it's static, learning all this stuff now, you pretty much have to have
Yeah.
such
Well,
a delicate hand and a paintbrush to set it down. You can't touch it
oh
with
yeah,
your hands.
I
It'll
remember.
stick to
Yeah,
you. It
yeah,
will literally
exactly.
stick, and you're trying to wash it off.
Especially
And
with me,
I
with
have
my
sweaty
sweaty
hands too. And it'll stick, and I've had it happen, and you're trying to wash it off, and then you're covered in gold glitter.
Gold. Yeah.
It's magical, but
Yeah.
it's not the point we're wanting.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I hope that was
cool.
good.
Yeah, that was really
I think
interesting.
it was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to this. It's really fun. We sit together and research. I'm super excited to hear because I don't know anything. We don't talk about that. Also,
Yeah.
we do not share with each other much. We just kind of go like, what are you kind of working on in this? And I kind of give a hint, and we realize, nope, I'm not doing that one. So
Yeah.
all of this is like the reactions are
I know. So like
awesome
everything
right
you
now.
told me, I didn't even know really. I didn't know anything. You just kind of hinted, and then I've only told you a little bit about not. I don't think I told you anything about what I'm doing.
I don't think so either.
I think I told you the last name.
Well, I don't remember. See?
Okay. So I am going to talk about the Hendricks family.
Okay.
Okay, so the Hendricks family lived in Bloomington, Illinois, and consisted of David Hendricks, his wife Susan Hendricks, and their 3 children, Rebecca, who is 9, Grace, who is 7, and Benjamin, who is 5. David was an orthopedist. I knew I was going to get mixed up because it's like orthopedist and orthotics and all that. So he was an orthopedist, and he owned an orthotics business called Cash Manufacturing Incorporated. So he had developed a back brace, and he was like really successful in his career.
I need that.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I need to work on my posture right now. The Hendricks were also members of a strict fundamentalist sect of Protestantism. Protestantism, known as the Plymouth Brethren.
Oh,
and so the family really like kept to themselves, and they hung out with like family and friends from their church.
Their church community only.
Exactly. So on November 7th, 1983, the day started off very normal for the family. That morning, David rode his motorcycle to the Bloomington airport, where he had a small plane he liked to work on. Susan went to a doctor's appointment and then hung out with the kids while David was away, working on his plane. Later that day, Susan went to a baby shower she was co-hosting with her sister in Delvin, which is about 40 minutes away from Bloomington. And when she was gone at the baby shower, or while she was gone, David took the kids to Chuck E. Cheese. And I know, I'm like...
Plague-infested mouse gambling casino for children.
So he took them to Chuck E. Cheese, and they had vegetarian pizza and root beer. So probably what we would have gotten too. Or except my kids are like, cheese, just cheese.
Oh, I love just cheese pizza.
I do love just cheese. So then David was like, okay, come on, kids, it's time to go. But they, of course, were having too much fun and wanted to stay. So he was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to run around the corner real quick and get some gas because he was going to leave for a work trip. I know, weird. Like
my face just dropped. Like,
yeah, you just leave your kids at Chuck E. Cheese.
That's
3 kids and
they do a hand stamp thing now.
Yeah, I don't know if they did that in the 80s. I remember they did that in the 90s.
Oh, wow, I don't remember that.
I do remember that.
We used to go with Girl Scouts. I don't remember getting a hand stamp.
Yeah, we used to go with like family and
difference
friends
between
and
Oregon and California.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, so we got a hand stamp.
Yeah,
and but anyway, so like he goes and he gets gas in his car because he's going to be leaving for a work trip that night. So anyway, so he goes and gets gas, comes back, wrangles up the 3 kids, and they left.
Goodness. I thought it was starting here.
No.
I was like, the kids are going to be gone.
No.
Okay.
So he got the kids. They left at about 8, and then they stopped at a bookmobile and got new library books at around 8:15.
I forgot those were a thing.
Yeah, so they all got some new books and then headed home. So then, of course, David does what any dad does, gets them in bed, which takes a while, which is why he's like, well, they were in bed between like 9 and 9:30.
Yeah,
which is typical. And then he just continues to pack for his work trip. So then Susan gets home from the baby shower around like 10:30, and they talk for a little bit, and then Susan goes to bed at like 11. So this work trip, David's plan is to drive all night to Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, they're in Illinois. So drive to Wisconsin and then check into a hotel. He then planned on stopping a cat. It's always the same cat here to interrupt us. So sorry. Anyway, so his plan is to drive all night to Wisconsin, check into a hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and then on his way back home, he would stop at multiple places to sell his back brace. So like stop, like just drive one way and then
Yeah.
on your way home, and then you get home at night. So it's like a whole day thing. He's done this type of work trip multiple times, so it's like nothing out of the ordinary.
Which now the thought is so strange because you want to sell something.
Yeah.
You don't have to like cold sell it to Sears and
Yeah, exactly.
That's
It's just
crazy.
like, make a business trip and do it in person. And it's his back brace he's selling.
Mhm.
So he basically, made himself successful by selling his back brace. So anyways, he leaves at 11 and drives to Wisconsin for his work trip.
Mhm.
So on November 8th, 1983, the very next morning,
Mhm.
David calls the house to check in on his family and doesn't get an answer. He doesn't think too much about it and just, figures like, oh, I'll just try again later. And then he checks out of his motel room and starts back, his trip back to Bloomington
Yeah.
to start doing his stops. He makes a stop in the afternoon at a payphone because it's the 80s. It's not like he's just in his car on a cell phone. But yeah, so stops at a payphone, calls again, no answer. So this is when he asks his assistant to try to reach them, and he also calls her mom, his mother-in-law, and also asks the neighbors to go knock on the door and see if they can
Do a
see
welfare check.
yeah,
before
just
you
like
call the police.
Exactly. So just like, hey, can you go over and see if like anybody's like home or whatever, and the neighbors say that they didn't get a response when they went to the house.
Mhm.
So, and it looked like nobody was home.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then he's like, oh, okay, didn't really think like, oh, maybe they just left somewhere.
Mhm.
Not really gonna, worry about it.
Because you couldn't just call and tell them, hey, I'm going to leave.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, sometimes I'll do that. Like, but now it's different. I can just text like, hey,
Exactly.
I'm headed to the store or whatever. But
Mhm.
yeah, back then it's like, she could have just been like, hey, kids, let's go. Or
Spontaneous.
Yeah.
Let's just go do something. And
exactly. So, he made another stop on his way home. Still not able to reach his family, but he decided to exercise. So he worked out.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
got to get those
he's
steps
still
in when you're driving.
Yeah, and so then he still couldn't reach his family. So by 6:35, he decides to call the Bloomington Police Department.
Mm.
He informed them that he was worried because he hasn't been able to reach his family all day.
Mhm.
And he, let them know, like, I asked the neighbors to check in. They didn't see anything. It's just a little weird. And then he also said that he knew his family was supposed to be at a dinner date at about 5:30. And when he called over there, they said that the family never showed up. So he was like, maybe they had a car accident or something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just unusual for the family to,
Mhm.
not be him,
Like
not
break
be able to.
plans and then not tell anyone as well.
Exactly, not be able to reach them all day. So he's thinking, like, did they get in a car accident?
Oh, no.
Something.
That's immediately what I would think too when someone's
Mhm.
late somewhere.
Exactly.
Panic.
So, exactly. So the Bloomington Police Department decided to send Officer Mike Hibbins and Detective Dennis O'Brien to the house at 10:30 p.m. to do a welfare check on Susan and the children. Remember, it's like, David's doing this long trip, so
Yeah.
it took him all night to drive out there, and he's
Mhm.
making all these stops. He's gonna be home late, and
Yeah.
that was just typical.
The stops are also him stopping to contact, so taking him
Mhm.
even longer to get home too.
Exactly. So, they get there at 10:30 to do a welfare check, and they're looking around and they discover that the back door is unlocked, but it's
Mhm.
closed.
Mhm.
It's just like front door is locked, but back door is unlocked. So that's a little unusual.
Uh-huh.
They enter the home and they see like the whole downstairs is a mess. It's been
Oh.
like ransacked. There's
Ooh,
like
okay.
there's stuff everywhere.
Mhm.
There's drawers and cabinets that like have been rifled through, and there's just stuff everywhere. So then they go upstairs, and that is where they find Susan and all three children
No.
literally hacked to death.
Ooh, I just got gross
Yeah.
chills. Gross.
Yeah. So,
Oh, it's just so sad and scary.
yeah.
Ew.
So they had found all three children in one room together, and Susan was found in the master bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Their necks and heads were where most of the wounds were, but little 5-year-old Benjamin got like the absolute worst of it.
Oh my God, the
I know.
baby.
I have chills because I have a 5-year-old just even thinking
Yeah.
about that. Their throats were slashed, and there were a lot of wounds directly to their face.
Oh my God. Oh, that's like nasty hatred. That's something else.
So there was a butcher's knife and an axe that was left on Grace and Benjamin's bed, where they clearly had like fallen asleep together in bed. But there was no blood on either of the weapons.
Oh, weird.
Both of the weapons actually belonged to the Hendricks family.
Oh, okay.
So the killer didn't bring the murder weapons with them. It was just there. There was no blood on the murder weapons, but there was blood like all over the room. The bedding was completely soaked. The walls were covered with blood splatter.
So the crime obviously happened there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But there was no blood anywhere else in the house. Not a single drop.
Oh, it's like Dexter with the plastic sheets and
Yes.
stuff.
I know. It's like nowhere in the house.
Yeah.
Not a drop. They couldn't find blood
That's
anywhere
crazy.
else.
So no blood evidence at all?
No.
Oh my
Like
God.
other than in the room. And obviously in the master bedroom too.
Yeah.
There was blood there. So the only physical evidence at the scene was a faint footprint on the back porch and the murder weapons left on the bed. And since the murder weapons were wiped of all their blood, they were also wiped clean of fingerprints. So there
was the footprint in like dirt or
I think it was on the porch, like on the patio. I'm not really sure. It was like because there really was no evidence. It was literally like, oh, there's like maybe a footprint. Can't really go off of that. And then blood and weapons that were cleaned of anything.
Yeah.
I just think it's so crazy how something that horrific, you think blood everywhere, but not a drop.
Oh yeah, how did it just stay
No
there?
evidence. It was cleaned up like in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So they brought cleaning supplies with them is what I'm thinking.
I have no idea. It's like, yeah, it's just bizarre.
Oh, that's crazy.
So with all of that, there's not much for detectives to go on. Like, there really isn't. So there was a lot of people that showed up at the crime scene. And there were so many people that when David finally returned home, he had to park like far away and walk up. And he's just seeing
that's
like
awful. Like the amount of time you have to think about it.
Yeah, like what is happening.
The worst case scenario, and you're getting closer, hoping it's not your house.
And you just know it's like,
Not good.
He had to have known because it's like you called in for a welfare check.
Oh yeah,
and there's
then, oh god,
all of this around your house.
Oh no.
So once he arrived at his home, family members and detectives told him what happened, and so David cries and simply says that his family is in heaven now. So some people could say that's such a strange thing to say, but I think he was a religious guy. So if he knew, like,
that's right. I literally already forgot from the very beginning of this story.
Yeah,
okay.
No, he's
like their whole family,
their whole
religious. Community
so,
is based around.
So he's probably just like, wow, they're, he's probably in shock. Like, well, they're in heaven now. Like, and he's crying. Yeah. He's clearly upset. So since his house was an active crime scene, he went over to like the neighbor's house to stay because he couldn't stay at home. David gave detectives permission to search his home, office, and his person. He even agreed to a polygraph test, which he passed. However, within a couple weeks, detectives moved to the theory that David committed the murder because, of course, the spouse is always the
first
husband
person they
did
look
it,
at,
and they didn't have anything else. So it's like he must have done it. So even though Susan's family were convinced that David had nothing to do with the murder, investigators were like, nope, it has to be him. Who else?
It would just be such a good cover to constantly check in from far away at these payphones
and leave the night up. So they're just thinking like, how convenient, that like he's gone.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And then it happens.
And then
maybe he hired someone to do it. He doesn't have to be there to have done it.
Exactly. So they're just thinking it's him. So on December 5th, 1983, David Hendricks was arrested for the murder of his wife and 3 children, even though there was no physical evidence linking him to the scene at all.
Yeah.
Everything against him was completely circumstantial.
Yeah.
And that's just so scary to think.
It really does.
It really is, because it's like, man, he was just going on a business trip.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't even there. So detectives tested his car, his home, and even the motel room where he had stayed. There was no blood anywhere.
Yeah.
You would think if he committed these murders and then drove on his business trip, it would be in his car.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Yeah. So nothing. There was literally nothing to connect him. The initial theory was that he could have committed the murders and then cleaned up elsewhere. There was nothing showing that blood had been cleaned up at the house or any other location that David was known to be at. Still, police have the theory that he murdered his family in the early hours of the evening and then got in the car and left for Wisconsin for his business trip.
No,
This
could
would
be.
definitely be very hard to do with the fact that he was more than likely covered head to toe in blood.
Oh my gosh, right?
That's why I'm like, how could he have gotten in his car and cleaned up elsewhere and you don't find any blood in his car?
Yeah.
It's
really
just,
weird.
it doesn't make sense. So there was no theory in like how he cleaned up since there was no blood anywhere. So they didn't really I don't know. Well, he must have cleaned up, but we don't know how.
Yeah, that sucks so bad.
So the autopsy was the one thing that prosecutors really used to help line up a timeline of when the family was murdered. The autopsy of the kids showed that there were undigested pieces of vegetables and pizza. So they still had their dinner in their bellies.
From the day before.
Yeah.
Your food digests in like 3 hours.
So.
What an asshole.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So remember this. Yeah. They had the pizza before 8 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is what the prosecution was using to say that the family was murdered when he was home.
Yeah.
So, but okay. So, according to the Journal of Dental and Medical Sciences, quote, when and what the deceased ate for his last meal is important information for the doctor who will conduct the autopsy. Various ingested food materials remain within the stomach for variable periods of time, depending on the nature and size of the meal.
Sorry. I just had the most ridiculous thought. I was like, see, you need to eat just in case someone murders you.
Exactly.
The
We were
food
just
left
talking
over
about
in
not
your-
eating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it has been determined through extensive research that under ordinary circumstances, the stomach empties its contents 4 to 6 hours after a meal.
Little longer. Okay.
So it could have been 6 hours later. So they were saying, therefore, they're kind of going more off the 4-hour timeline. And it's like, okay, so the presence of the undigested pizza puts the timeline of the murder closer between like 9 and 11 when David was home.
Okay.
So that's what they're using. So this is why they're like, he had to do it. He was home.
Yeah.
He didn't leave till 11. And then remember, his wife didn't come home until like 10:30. So it's like, yeah. Anyways, so what was the motive that detectives came up with? That he was just done with his marriage and didn't want to be married anymore now. So that he had more money and success now that he's like got this successful career with his brace. They also
traveling gives you the freedom to do them.
Exactly. So they also said that his religion would prevent him from divorcing Susan, so murder was the only way out.
Oh.
If he didn't want to be kicked out of the church. But the church later stated that this wouldn't have been an issue, that he would still be a member. It's like I think murder is a little bit more
It's a little worse.
It's a little worse than
to the eyes of your brethren. Like, come on.
Exactly. So that's what they were using. So the prosecution also used the fact that he had lost some weight in recent years, like in the year or so before.
Oh, so he was
now
getting
it was like
all fancy for someone else.
So they were just, saying, oh, maybe he's pursuing other women now that he's like lost some weight. And
That's
he like
still
feels
a
good about
reach.
it. It really is, yeah. So, okay, so part of his career involved measuring women for the back brace.
Oh, okay.
And David used models for his back braces. And they were younger, attractive women. And a lot of the times he would request that they be topless. I guess for more accurate,
yeah.
Measurements. I don't know.
I mean, I get it, but like, come on, put a slip on.
Yeah, I really don't understand the reasoning behind that.
He's not a doctor, right?
No, he's an...
Oh, yes, he is.
Yeah, well, yeah, he is.
Wow, good job, Elaine.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. So the prosecution was saying that he was just trying to be, sexual with this, but all the
Mm-hmm.
models testified that he never groped them, never made them feel threatened in any way.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecution really went into the models and, like, what did he do with you and stuff.
Yeah.
Many of the models testified.
Mm-hmm.
They did state that they would have to be topless and measurements would need to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
One of them stated that David claimed her back was out of alignment, so he needed to, like, massage her back for a few, like, which could be true. He
Sure,
is
chiropractors
on
do that too.
a back brace.
Right.
It's yeah. So it could be legitimate. So others said that he like would need to do an additional measurement, so they'd have to come back. All of this sounds very legit.
Yeah.
If he's
Mhm.
perfecting this back brace and he's really trying to sell it and stuff,
Mhm.
he's gonna have. And I guess if you're
Getting
focusing
a
on the
visual
back,
on your product on a person
yes,
with different back issues is also important too.
and if he's photographing them from behind to show the back, it's not like their chest is
Sure.
really in it. So yeah, not really, weird, but he never made any sexual advancements against any of these women.
Yeah.
He never had any affairs, and, like, they testified about this. So this doesn't have anything to do with the murder, but clearly the prosecution was, like, trying to use it to show motive and reason why.
They're
Oh,
really
maybe,
trying to find
yeah.
some
Oh, they're grasping at
something.
straws. It's
Yeah.
like anything that they can get. And as you know, they tried to use his religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so with all of that, unfortunately, in the end, the jury ended up finding him guilty of all charges.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So the prosecution was seeking the death penalty, but the judge said, quote, "I cannot in good conscience apply the sanction of death unless I have been convinced of his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I have not, and mere belief is not enough."
Right. That irrefutable evidence
Yes.
is what you need for stuff like that.
Yeah, you can't. I don't see how they can go for the death penalty when everything is circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally no physical evidence.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's not like you have his DNA, his blood, like,
Right.
Or it's just, yeah. So obviously the judge could not issue the death penalty and instead sentenced David to 4 life sentences, 1 for his wife and the other 3 for his 3 children. So during David's incarceration, there was a jailhouse snitch that claimed David confessed to the entire crime, which, they're so reliable.
Right. Right.
So, which, obviously not. The snitch was a pathological liar, and everyone, including the guards, said David only ever said he was innocent.
Mm-hmm.
There was absolutely nothing connecting him to the crime, so why would he all of a sudden be like, yeah, I did it, so...
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, saying you did it isn't going to change
no.
anything.
And think about the only thing connecting him is stomach contents in this proposed, like, timeline.
Yeah.
And they're saying that this timeline, you were with the kids. You were with your family. So, anyways, in July 1990, his conviction was overturned by the Illinois Supreme Court.
Oh.
The grounds of this decision...
kind of doesn't surprise me,
Yeah.
though.
And the grounds of this was that the evidence presented was unfair and irrelevant. The testimony of the models was thrown out and deemed irrelevant because it had nothing to do with the murders.
Mm-hmm.
The religious beliefs of the church were also thrown out as motive because the church stated that, there's no truth in the fact that he'd be thrown out. So if he were to divorce her, so that's, irrelevant. And there was also, just no relevance of religion or these models at all. Like, it's like we said, they were grasping at straws. They were trying to bring in as much as they could.
Just trying to find something because there was nothing.
So a new trial was ordered in 1991, and prosecution is relying solely on the stomach contents to prove the timeline of when the family was murdered. So that's all they have.
Yeah.
The defense presented experts who talked about the science of the stomach contents and how it cannot be used as an exact science, but rather as a general time frame.
Oh, yeah, because, children have incredibly high metabolisms.
Yes.
And women tend not to,
Mm-hmm.
but she wasn't there. So it wouldn't have mattered. Like,
Yeah.
it's literally only off of the children.
Yeah, and I think also her stomach contents, she had, like, salad and stuff at the baby shower, so I'm sure it's, like, that kind of went in with the timeline, but they knew that she got home much later, 10:30. So, but yeah. So there's, as you said, many factors that go into digestion with ages, energy levels,
Yeah.
all of that. Think about it. They were at Chuck E. Cheese running around.
Mm-hmm.
And they also reportedly scarfed down their pizza so they
Mm-hmm.
could play, obviously.
Yeah,
I
of
remember doing
course.
that as a kid.
Yeah, try
Like,
to
I just
eat
want
as
to play. I don't
fast
want
as
to eat.
possible.
So, with all of that, there's like a hole in the prosecution's
Mm-hmm.
theory that the family was murdered during that specific time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So, once again, according to the Journal of Dental and Medical Sciences, quote, from the present study, it was concluded that indirect estimation of time since death can be possible from examination of gastric contents and gastric emptying, but due to variability of gastric emptying in different individuals, we cannot exactly define time since death. So other parameters like rigor mortis, postmortem lividity, cooling of
Mm-hmm.
body, and putrefaction changes should be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
Because if they were murdered, at night, like they had been sitting there all day, 24 hours pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too many factors that go into the digestion of the pizza, so it can't be used as definitive timeline of death.
Right.
So with all of those facts presented in his new trial, he was found not guilty and was a free man after being in prison for 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is like, let's say he did do it. At the same time, nobody should be charged because there is literally no evidence. You just can't. It's crazy.
Mhm.
And that's how it works. Like with my last case,
Mhm.
the one, if you listen to it, if you haven't heard it,
Before this one.
there was just a picture of a foot.
Mhm.
Crazy people could amputate someone's foot and they could still be alive. Why wouldn't they tell or go to the hospital? But those things
Exactly.
matter. And unfortunately, he said he killed her, but it's hearsay. And a
Mhm.
foot doesn't equal that. And so in that case, it's hard because he maybe totally did.
Yeah.
But with no evidence, even me as a juror, I'd be like, no, I
Well,
don't
yeah,
think so. None
it's
of that makes sense. It's crazy.
It's that beyond reasonable doubt. It's
Exactly.
like, I have doubts.
Mm-hmm.
It's if he did, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I can't definitively say yes. So yeah, I think the jury was right in this case of, with evidence presented, you can't say he did it.
Yeah, you just
You could
can't.
say he might have, but with all the variabilities of digestion, he
Mhm.
very well couldn't have. Someone could have come in right out, watched the house, saw him leave, and then went in and did it right
Yeah.
as he, who knows. So yeah, in this case, it was classic. The husband did it, but so there was no further investigation into like any other
Yeah.
possible,
And again, there's like no
suspects.
ring doorbells.
Exactly.
It's not the same. There's not the same way that we do it. I mean, I'm sure places have neighborhood watch, but that's pretty late.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, that time frame is late. But back
Mhm.
then, that's pretty late. You
Yeah.
know, for the early 80s,
Yeah.
people would be in
Yeah, it was
bed,
83,
ready
yeah.
to go to work and have their next day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's
So because of this, the murders remain unsolved.
mm-hmm.
Even to this day, nobody's ever been looked at for the murders other than David, and the case is now cold with no suspects, like, at
Yeah.
all. But however, David has a theory on who could have committed the
okay.
murders. So he thinks it was his ex-brother-in-law, so Susan's sister's
Mm-hmm.
ex-husband.
Okay.
Susan's sister said that her ex-husband came to her house that night of the murder, the night of the murder,
Mm-hmm.
covered in blood. He had not covered in blood, but he had clothes with blood on them.
Oh.
But he worked in an ER.
Oh.
So it is unusual, but maybe not that unusual.
I mean, let me tell you,
but
I would not come to my home in someone else's blood from work.
Yeah.
Like when I feel terrible, nurses, y'all are amazing. But sometimes when I see a nurse out in public, I'm like, oh my God, pull my
Like,
shirt up.
yeah.
You're still in your scrubs. Are those flu scrubs or are they clean
Yeah,
ones? You
I
know, because you
know.
can bring home so much. The average ER nurse would probably not come home in those clothes.
Exactly. With blood.
Right.
Yeah. So that's like the only theory or speculation David had was that, his ex-brother-in-law
Oh my God.
did it. And he was thinking maybe he was just jealous or like
Mm.
of his success or
Yeah.
happiness or wealth. It was just like, but there wasn't enough to go off there.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that was it. So, but it's interesting because detectives did a lot of work to see if David did it. Like
Mhm.
forensics interviews, searches of the motel, even rest stops.
Yeah.
Like they stopped at rest stops to check
Okay.
for blood and nothing. There was nothing.
Yeah.
Everything was showing he wasn't the killer, but they were like, it in their head like he did it.
They just wanted to wrap it up and make other people feel comfortable by saying they found who did it.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to leave like, oh, that's over 3 people is considered a serial killer.
Yeah.
So, that's the start of it. That's scary.
Yeah.
Those kinds of murders, that was horrific.
Yeah. I just don't see, just reading all of this, I mean, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
No, of course.
And he could have been a religious man or not. Like, you never really know someone. But in this case, it does. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I think he probably didn't do it.
I don't know. From what you've told me, it sounds like no. It sounds like he didn't.
Yeah. And yeah, just the no blood anywhere thing is just so bizarre to me. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like not even on the weapons, not anywhere. I'm just thinking like, what? Not
how do you clean that good?
Exactly. Like nothing on the back door, like nothing. So yeah, I don't know. It almost sounds like a robbery gone wrong or something. I don't know. Which is interesting that they didn't take that approach to it. Because the whole downstairs was like ransacked and,
true.
So it's like, why didn't they think someone broke in through the back door or they left the back door unlocked and someone got in? Or
crazy.
They did it after I don't know, the whole thing.
Yeah, because like, your first case, the same thing happened then as well. What I find great, I just keep saying so crazy, is the little boy getting the most trauma. That's interesting to me because even people who are angry tend to take that out on adults more than children. That kind of brutalization is like rage.
Yes. And I did read something about fathers who kill their children, and especially like if it's their little boy, because he had 2 daughters and a boy. And so it's like they see themselves in their child. So he would really either have to hate himself to do something like that to his child. So I don't know. It is bizarre that like why it does feel very violent and personal. But I mean, who knows? It could have been the ex-brother-in-law.
Yeah.
We don't know. But as of now, it's just a cold case. So
that's very interesting. I wonder, do you know what he's doing now?
I did not look into that. I probably should have, but I don't know.
Update.
Yeah, I know. Like,
check out TikTok and Instagram.
I know. We'll have to. Oh yeah. By the way, we made an Instagram and a TikTok. So if you're wondering about like we'll post it. It'll be over on our Instagram.
Yep. We'll post pictures of our cases, stuff that's appropriate. We're not gonna do graphic stuff, but
no.
Just what's prevalent. And then like to our crafts, we'll post stuff. I have a link that I'm definitely going to share of a podcast of its time. That was really interesting, of this really precious older gentleman and his book club. And he talked about the gold beating.
Oh.
He used to do it when he was a kid, and it was very interesting. And so it's like about an hour long. So I'll post the link to it so that people can.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's just a little listen. There's no visual to it, but it's on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
That was really crazy and sad, but that's very interesting. I've never heard of that at all.
Yeah.
Nope. That's brand new to me.
Yeah, it was new to me too. I don't remember hearing it anywhere else. Any other podcasts that I listened to.
Cool.
So anyways, well, with that said, stay crafty
and not crimey.
Bye.